Hello, it's Alex coming at you. Again, for the first time, really, since May. The last time I made a video for Radio Free Gastonia, the internet's #1 source for emergency history content, was at the end of spring 2020 semester. For my classes, I've been using this channel to post lectures for my courses. And that video's entitled something like putting a wrap on the weirdest semester ever, which I thought was funny, but things got weirder and weirder, curiouser and curiouser since then. At the time, I commented that at some point the pandemic will be behind us, at least in the sense of like the immediate, like clear and present danger of people getting sick and dying left and right. Eventually there'll be a vaccine. Eventually we'll get the spread under control, and this will be behind us technically. But I also said that like the ramifications of it are going to be with us for a long time, and I was wrong and right. Like here we are in December, and it's still going stronger than ever, actually, which is shocking. But there seems like there's a possibility that there will be treatment and vaccines relatively soon. So it will, in fact, be behind us at some point. Just it's taken a lot longer than I think most people expected. But the challenges that this has created for everyone is those are not disappearing. The psychological trauma of all of this, the loss of family members and friends that we'll never get back, and the hardship of this year, the economic impact of people just losing savings, losing homes, losing jobs, not spending, businesses being shuttered because of this catastrophe. We'll be living with this for certainly the rest of my life, I think, in one way or the other. But that's history. We live with it. We live with the past and the present. So here we are. It's the beginning of December, and we've gotten through another semester. This one was very challenging in its own regard. This was the first full COVID semester where we actually knew what we were more or less going into, as opposed to back in March when it was just this sort of just totally discombobulating shock to the system where we were improvising like crazy. So we've gotten through a lot of this, and it's really been hard. I mean, it's probably been easier on me than most people, but I see what our students are going through, what our colleagues and coworkers, staff and faculty are going through, problems like childcare, or losing a home, or having to navigate the challenges of elder care in a situation where maybe you can't see your elderly relatives for fear of causing harm to them, or maybe not being able to see somebody who's in the hospital. My own mom and stepfather were hospitalized with COVID, and it was extremely terrifying because there's nothing I could do about it. I couldn't even go and see them. So it's been rough, right? And we had to deal with political problems, which have been challenging, especially from the point of view of education. Some of the policies of the outgoing presidential administration created some real difficulties for us running programs, academic higher ed programs, and certainly for students, especially international students. And this has been very vexing and sad. We've gotten through it, and here we are. So I just want to talk now about another way of sort of approaching this. And during this time, I've been trying to work on a project which has been in the works for like almost 2.5 years, really, even though it's only just begun. Like we're at the beginning of it still. But it's a book project that is about the history of care work and care industries, primarily healthcare and education. And this is in sort of conversation with the other two books that I've written, which were one about the entertainment industry and copyright, and the other about sort of the high-tech industry and urban planning for economic development. This third part is supposed to be about that other huge swath of the post-industrial economy, which has to do with care. You can say it's the service economy, but like particularly things that are about um, reproducing the labor force, maintaining and growing and nurturing people, which is necessary, whether that's child rearing or elder care or health care for people who are in the workforce. This is a huge part of the economy, and it doesn't get as much attention as you know Apple or Google or Facebook because those things are sexy and cutting edge and whatnot. Whereas a huge amount of care work goes on all the time. So I wanted to do a project about this. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've gotten to read a lot of really wonderful scholarship and fields I didn't know anything about, really. Um, Anthropology, sociology, medical sociology, feminist economists, and their understanding of their analysis and interpretation of affective and reproductive labor. This has been richly rewarding. And then philosophers of care, too, like Milton Miroff or Neil Noddings. This has been great, but I haven't been able to figure out how to actually operationalize this into a book. Or like, what is the book about? Like, what are we doing here? As Maddie B. Stats likes to say. So I've been beating my head against the wall, and it's a weird conundrum because often academics feel like what they're working on is regarded as irrelevant. Like, why do you need to write about 13th century Old English literature? That's stupid, that's obscure, that's irrelevant. Like, who cares? Get a life. Or whatever, specific esoteric topic that different types of scholars analyze. This is kind of like the opposite because the pandemic has made the care economy and care work, many of whom we would describe as essential workers, front and center and almost inescapably present foremost in our minds. So it's a problem of like things, what you're working on being too relevant and too of the moment and hard to throw your arms around. So I've really struggled with that since the beginning of the pandemic, trying to make progress on this project and really not finding my footing. So I come up with a different approach. And so I thought that what I'm doing is not working, so if what you're doing is not working, try something else. It's good advice. I've begun already working on a project. It's nominally going to be a podcast series. I don't really know what form it will take, but interviewing people who have done care work or currently care workers about their experiences. We can't go to archives right now as historians. So many of the ways that we would traditionally do research are kind of closed off for the time being. So I thought, well, if I just start talking to people, then maybe I'll find the gestalt of the story. Like you find the shape of the story in the archives. At least in my case, you don't know what the story is until you go and have this encounter with the archive or with oral history. So that's what I'm working on. Very much influenced by some of my heroes like Studs Terkel. This just desire to talk to people and ask questions and learn about what their lives are like. Things that might seem mundane and like not interesting to other people, but they're very interesting to me. And also, inspired by a lot of this wonderful world of podcasting that has developed of nonfiction storytelling, journalism, and so forth. In particular, I was very inspired by Katie Mingle's new podcast series, According to Need, about the problem of being unhoused or homeless, and all the systems and the policies and stories that have to do with that. I listened to that and I thought, well, maybe I can do this. I can ask people questions and go from there. So that's kind of what we're doing here. I don't know what it's going to be called yet. I've got some ideas. But I don't know. It's a way into things. It's just, we don't know until we start asking the questions. And I certainly felt like I was not making any progress. So This project is going to continue. I'm thinking about calling it The Impulse to Give, The Mouth of the Labyrinth. These are both references to the work of Simone Weil, my number one girl over here, the French philosopher. And she has this passage that I think is so interesting. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it with what our girl Simone said. The beauty of the world is the mouth of a labyrinth. The unwary individual who, on entering, takes a few steps is soon unable to find the opening, worn out, with nothing to eat or drink, in the dark, separated from his dear ones, and from everything he loves and is accustomed to. He walks on without knowing anything or hoping anything, incapable even of discovering whether he is really going forward or merely turning around on the same spot. But this affliction is as nothing compared with the danger threatening him. For if he does not lose courage, if he goes on walking, it is absolutely certain that he will finally arrive at the center of the labyrinth, and there God is, waiting to eat him. Later he will go out again, but he will be changed. He will become different after being eaten and digested by God. Afterward, he will stay near the entrance so that he can gently push all those who come near into the opening of the labyrinth. Of course, labyrinth is a very powerful metaphor and symbol trope that goes back to ancient cultures, ancient history, a maze, something that people were lost inside of. What Simone says is that if the person keeps going, they might feel like they're going around in circles and they might just feel like they're getting nowhere. But if they keep going, they will find the center of the labyrinth. And there God is, waiting to eat them. After that, they will stand outside the labyrinth and try to push people in. So it's kind of, I think it's an interesting sort of analog to the allegory of the cave, where the person escapes the cave and then wants to bring everyone out with them into the light so they can see what the real three-dimensional reality is. In this, the person is wanting to push them into the labyrinth so they can go on this journey. And what Simone suggests is that you have to keep going and just trust that you will find something. And when you do find it, it will transform you, and then you want other people to know. So that's what I'm doing. The Mouth of the Labyrinth might be the name of the podcast, or the book, even, for that matter. So this is all just sort of a means toward an end, the end of which we don't know exactly what it is. But anyway, thank you for tuning in with, our number one source for emergency history content, Radio Free Gastonia. And I'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye.